Hello, YouTube vinyl community, music lovers, Deftones fans, and everyone else. My name is Jake, and I'm joined by my best friend, Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Awesome. And in this video, we're going to be ranking the 10 Deftones albums from worst to best, including their new album, Private Music. Stay tuned. So welcome back to the channel, everybody. Like I said, we're going to be ranking the 10 Deftones albums from worst to best. We're both fans of Deftones, obviously, but Michael here, he's a very big Deftones fan. And Mike, just talk about your experience with Deftones and introduce yourself to the channel.
So my name's Mike, as he said. I've been a very close friend of Jake's for a number of years now. And me personally, the reason why I'm in this video is I've been a diehard Deftones fan since I was roughly like 10 years old.
He's a certified Deftones expert.
They honestly are one of, if not my all-time favorite band, easily, and they always have been. And technically speaking, I'm kind of one of the reasons Jake here got into Deftones as well. I kind of introduced him to them and got him into them. So, you know, we're here today finally to rank all 10 albums.
Hell yeah.
And the thing that I really like about Deftones, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with, they're one of those bands, not only have they really not made a bad album, but fans' opinions on the album are kind of all over the place. You know, you could take 10 different Deftones fans, and I swear they will all have completely different rankings of all the albums. You know? And that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to how good they are as a band.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as you guys know, like, I'm a big fan of Swans, I'm a big fan of the Beach Boys, and my ranking for those two bands completely different from other people that I know.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting. And one more thing before we start this video off, to prove that we are big fans of Deftones, we actually got to see them perform at the Peterson in Pittsburgh. They had a show with Gojira, and it was incredible.
It was, yeah. The crazy thing, too, we live in the Pittsburgh area, and that was in 2022, and they had not played a show in Pittsburgh since 2010, so I did not see them live until 2022, and Jake and our other buddies were with us, and yeah, it was absolutely amazing. So,
and this guy was in the pit.
I was like
for that show,
three or third or fourth row roughly. So it was pretty awesome.
Just incredible. So this is going to be a very fascinating video. I'm really looking forward to this ranking. So we're each going to do our own individual rankings. So I'm going to say my number 10. Mike's going to do his number 10, so on and so forth. And I'm really eager to find out your rankings.
Yeah, that's another thing too. We actually don't know what the other person's rankings are.
Yeah, so
we're both going in blind here.
All reactions here are going to be genuine, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this video. So, without further ado, let's get into the ranking.
Let's do it.
All right, guys, we're going to be starting our ranking with number 10. Mike is actually going to go first instead of me because he has a surprise in store. So what is your number 10 Deftones pick?
This is not going to be a surprise to most people watching this video, but it is going to be to Jake because he knows my history with this album in particular. But I finally, you know, I have it set in stone of what my least favorite Deftones album is as of right now. And it sucks because, like I said, I genuinely enjoy all of their albums, me individually. I honestly love all of them, but one of them has to be my least favorite, and
we're gonna pick it from the pile. I'm gonna cover my eyes.
So my least favorite Deftones album is Gore.
Wow. Okay.
Which most Deftones fans will say that this is their least favorite Deftones album, but here's the thing. This is very painful for me to say this, that this is my least favorite, because, believe it or not, when this album first came out, I was, like, in love with it. Like, I was, like, 15 or 16 when this album came out. I pre-ordered the vinyl. Like, I listened to it so many times I couldn't even count when it first came out, and I was obsessed with it. And, you know, over the years, I will admit it definitely does not hit the same way it once did.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, after this album came out, like, probably, like, late 2010s, like, 2018, 2019, I took a little bit of a break from Deftones because the band was not very active at that time and whatnot. And then when Ohms got announced in 2020, that's when I started getting back into them and revisiting everything and whatnot. And when I revisited Gore, it just did not hit the same way it once did.
Yeah.
However, I will say I do still love this album more than most Deftones fans probably do. But I will admit, I do kind of see why most people agree that this is probably the most lackluster Deftones album, but I still do enjoy it very much. There's a handful of songs on here that I still love to this day, and I think are incredible songs. So yeah. And another quick little Easter egg we're going to do here is we're actually going to say our favorite song off of each album. So my favorite song off Gore is Hearts Wires, or Hearts/Wires,
Okay.
however they want that to be pronounced. So yeah, my number 10, Gore.
Well, Mike, you can hand that record right over to me because Gore is also my number 10. And like Mike was saying, this isn't a bad album at all, but for me personally, this album just doesn't do a whole lot for me. I feel like it's pretty one-dimensional in its sound, and it just doesn't really have the grit that I'm really looking for in a Deftones album. But with that being said, it's not a terrible album. It's just not my go-to Deftones listening experience. My favorite song on this record has got to be the opener, Prayers, Triangles. I think that's a really good cut on this album. But sadly, one of these albums has to be in the 10th place spot. And for both of us, it is Gore.
All right. My number 9 is Ohms, the second most recent Deftones album from 2020.
Okay.
You know, I really enjoy this album. I think it was a solid album, and especially, like, honestly, Deftones in general in the last 10 years, it still blows my mind that they are able to create as good of music and as modern of music as they have been with as old as they are. I mean, they've been doing this well over 30 years now, and they're all in their 50s, and they're still making stuff like what's on this album just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it really was a solid album for what it was, especially, like I said, being how late in the band's career it was. And after Gore, I do think that this album was a lot more Deftones than Gore was, if that makes sense. You know, it really hit a lot harder for me, and I'm sure a lot of other Deftones fans, you know, compared to what Gore was. You know, so I really enjoyed it. The thing is with the newer albums, I feel like as of right now, you know, they don't quite have that like nostalgia factor or that like resonation factor that a lot of the older albums do.
That's
so
fair.
I feel like for me and a lot of other, you know, Deftones fans that have been listening to the band for a very long time, you know, it's kind of difficult to put an album like this, Gore, or the newest album really high in the rankings, given that like the older albums I've heard a million times. I grew up listening to most of them.
Yeah, you have that familiarity.
Right. So who knows? Maybe in like 10 years or so, if we redo this list, this might be a lot higher. Who knows?
Who knows?
For right now, it's my number 9. My favorite track on the album is the opening track, Genesis. So, yeah, number 9, Ohms.
Genesis. I love to hear that word, that's for sure. So coming in at number 9 on my list, I'm going to go with their debut, Adrenaline.
Okay.
This was back in their heyday when they were really in that like new metal craze. And this is like a very punchy and aggressive album, and it's pretty solid. I just think that they refined the formula that this had on their later albums, particularly another album which we will get to later in this video. All around, this isn't a bad album. But sadly, it's got to go in the number 9 for me. My favorite track on here is the opener, Bored. Great song. And there's some other great moments on this album as well, like 7 Words and Engine number 9. Really solid stuff on this album. But that's my number 9 pick, Adrenaline. And I think this came out in 1995. So, yeah, solid stuff. Hard to believe that this record is 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like, that's
literally,
absolutely insane.
All right, so my number 8 is going to be the newest album, Private Music, just came out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I will say, I really do like this album. And I honestly think of the most recent 3 albums in the last 10 years, this is probably my favorite. And I think that it has the most revisitability, if that's a word, of the last 3 albums. Granted, this album is still brand new, but I can already tell that I could see myself going back to this album more than Gore and Ohms, and I think just for that reason alone, it deserves the higher ranking. I know that so far people have been kind of all across the board on this album. There's some people that really love this album, and they say it's one of their favorites. Then there's some other people that are just kind of like, whatever. I think it's a really solid album. I'm not as in love with it as some people are, but, once again, I mean, these guys are in their 50s, and they're still making music that's this good.
Oh, yeah.
Mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
So, it's my number 8. Same thing with the last 2 albums. Maybe in 5 to 10 years when this marinates more, my opinion might change. I might like it a lot more than what I do now, but for right now, it's my number 8. My favorite track on the album is Milk of the Madonna, the second single that was released off the album. And quick little thing to add in about that song, I saw someone online said that song is like a hybrid between Maine off of Saturday Night Wrist and Swerve City from Koi no Yokon.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, and it was funny because after I read that and then listened to it again, I was like, you know what, that's right on the money, and I think that's really cool. I don't know if they did that intentionally or not, but I thought that was really cool, and that is my favorite song in the album. So my number 8, Private Music.
Sweet. I respect it. My number 8 is the one that you just talked about, Mike, and that is Ohms from 2020. This isn't a bad album by Deftones. The problem that I have with this album is that I don't know how much it adds to the Deftones story. I feel like that this is more of a continuation of what they were exploring with on albums like Koi no Yokon and Gore, and it doesn't really do anything to revitalize or energize that familiar sound. But with that being said, I think that this is still a solid album overall. My favorite track on this record is Pompeii. So yeah, Ohms, pretty solid album, but it is my number 8 pick. All right, time for Mike's number 7.
All right, my number 7 is going to be self-titled Deftones from 2003.
I respect it.
Something I want to say about this album that Jake's aware of, but just, for the audience. So, believe it or not, for the longest time, especially when I was growing up listening to Deftones, I was not into this album. I didn't dislike it, but it didn't click with me. I didn't really revisit it ever. It was my least favorite Deftones album for a long time. And what's funny is, the older I got, I started reading online that there's so many people out there. Well, I don't want to say there's a lot of people, but there's a certain demographic of Deftones fans that this is their favorite Deftones album or one of their favorites. Mm-hmm. There was actually a thread on Deftones Reddit a few years ago where someone just flat out asked, all right, what's the best Deftones album? Someone put self-titled in the comments and it got 50-some upvotes. And that blew my mind. When I started seeing this, I'm like, you know what? When I was growing up, this was the one Deftones album I just was not a fan of and whatnot. I liked some of the hits on it, but that was it. The rest of it I just was not my thing. So around college age, I started revisiting this album. And to be honest, I have probably listened to this album more than most Deftones albums, just in attempt to kind of really grasp it and understand, okay, what is it about this album that people love? And I will say, over the last 5 years or so, since I've listened to this album, or since I've been listening to this album a good bit, it honestly is finally starting to really click with me, and there is a lot of really, really good songs on this album that I genuinely think are some of the best songs they've ever made.
Oh yeah.
And who knows, if it's going to continue to get better and better for me as time goes on. Maybe in a few years it might be even higher than number 7. It may be a top 5, who knows. But for right now, it's my number 7. I do think this is a very solid album. Yeah, so my favorite song in this album is a little bit of a deep cut. It's the song Good Morning Beautiful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You know, that song completely blew it off when I was younger. And a few years ago, I heard this album fully through, and that song, I was like, dude, that is a freaking good song. And there's other songs in this album that are right up there with it, but that is my favorite song on the album. So, yeah, self-titled is my number 7.
Mike, you're really growing. I knew this guy whenever that was his number 10.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah.
he's really come around to the self-titled.
That album is finally growing on me. So
I like to hear it. So, my number 7, this might come as a surprise to not only you, Mike, but a lot of people watching this video, because I know that it's a fan favorite for a lot of people. It's Koi no Yokon. This is my number 7 pick. And like I was saying earlier, like, all these Deftones albums are really solid, including this album. I think that the problem that I have with this album is that I feel like that this is an incredibly ethereal album for Deftones standards.
It is, yeah.
Like, it really leans into that dream pop influence.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a huge fan of dream pop and shoegaze. He's no stranger to this. But when it comes to Deftones, I want something that's like equal parts hazy and heavy.
I can see that.
And I feel like this album is too mainly in that dreamy aura, and that's just not what I really seek in a Deftones album.
Yeah.
Like, I know that a lot of people absolutely love the song Rosemary off this album. It's honestly one of my least favorite songs on the album. It really doesn't do a whole lot for me. But there's some other, like, really, like, dreamy cuts on this, like, Entombed.
Yeah.
Really great song. What Happened to You, the closer, is very emotional and powerful. Great song off this album. But if I had to pick one song off this album, this is actually kind of tough, honestly. I'd probably have to go with Swerve City.
Okay.
I just think that is a ripper of an opener.
It is.
It's not really so much a tone setter because of how, like, dreamy and ethereal this album is. Like, it's a really high octane, like, punch in the face. Great way to open this album up. But it's still a really good song. I also really like Tempest. I have to give that song an honorable mention for sure. I hope that this album grows on me over time. But as of right now, I sadly have to put it at my number 7.
I don't know. You may have ruffled some feathers with.
I think I did.
With Rosemary being a least favorite.
I know.
My God.
I know.
That's a fan favorite.
I know it is. Like, I know a lot of people absolutely love that song. I believe it's their most streamed song off the album.
I think it is. Yeah.
And I know that on RYM, like, it's really acclaimed. I think the average track rating is like a 4.6 or something. Like, it's way up there. And this album, I actually think, is their second highest rated on the website behind White Pony.
All right, so next up is my number 6, and it is going to be the debut 95 Adrenaline. So, you know, this is another Deftones album that I've seen a lot of people's opinions are like all across the board on. You know, a lot of like the more modern fans of Deftones just really don't like this album, and I would assume it's because it's not very reflective of the rest of their discography, which I think is what kind of hurts it for most people that don't like this album that much. Because it's one of those things where, like, they did so much after this album and evolved so much that, like, this album is kind of like, it's like its own world, like back in 95.
Yeah.
I
was going to say that.
An odd comparison, like, if you guys are familiar with Radiohead, I kind of look at this as like Deftones' Pablo Honey, where, like, you know, a lot of Radiohead fans are just kind of like, yeah, you know, it's okay, it was their debut, whatever. But I feel like that's only because the band did so much after that. Like, I honestly think, let's say Deftones put this album out and then broke up, like never did anything after this. I honestly think this would be looked back upon as like a cult classic 90s.
Oh, absolutely,
like,
it would.
And that's the thing. I feel like since the band did so much other like really good stuff and evolved so much after this album, it kind of discredits this album a little bit, you know, because people that are mostly familiar with modern Deftones, they go into this album expecting that and they don't quite get it. So, me, however, I have always really loved this album, and the main reason it's so highly ranked for me, not only just because I love it so much, but the nostalgia factor. You know, when I first got into Deftones and I was in my young, you know, nu metal era, the two Deftones albums that I was listening to the most was this and Around the Fur.
Hell yeah.
And I have very fond memories of listening to a lot of songs in this album. And to this day, I really enjoy this album. I think it is a very fun, energetic, hard-hitting album, you know. And if you're a fan of heavier Deftones, like, this is definitely one that, like, you may very well be into, you know, if you haven't heard it or whatever. But yeah, I really enjoy this album. Like I said, a lot of it's nostalgia for me, but, you know, that's what makes it great is, you know, like I said in the beginning, people have so many different opinions about almost all the Deftones albums, you know. So yeah, Adrenaline's my number 6. My favorite track on it is the opener, Bored, same as Jake's.
Heck yeah.
The reason being...
it's such a damn good song, that's why.
That was, believe it or not, one of the first Deftones songs I ever fell in love with. Like, I literally remember blaring that song on YouTube, the music video for it, when I was like 10 years old, you know, and it's to this day, love that song. So
immaculate.
Immaculate. It honestly is an immaculate song. So, great way to open the album. So.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
Awesome.
That's my number 6.
Okay. Well, my number 6 is your number 7. I'm going to be talking about the self-titled Deftones.
All right.
And this came out, you said 2003, correct?
Yes.
So, obviously, not a lot of people, like, absolutely love this album. I mean, there are a lot of fans of this album. But this is an interesting album in their catalog because this immediately came after White Pony in 2000. So this came out 3 years later. And I feel like this album is like Deftones trying to figure it out. Like, what are they going to do after White Pony? Yeah. You know, that was a very experimental record. And I feel like that this album still continues in that lineage where it's like, do we explore more hardcore stuff? Do we explore more nu metal stuff? Do we explore more dream pop and shoegaze type of stuff? And this is really like a hodgepodge of all those ideas all across this record's 11 tracks. So it's a very eclectic album for Deftones standards. And don't get me wrong, there are some like lower points in the track listing, but the highs that this album has are extremely high. Like you said, some of the best songs that Deftones has ever put out are on this album, including my favorite track, Hexagram. What a phenomenal piece of music. Like those shrill guitars and Chino's vocal performance, so memorable. I definitely think that is one of his best all-time vocal performances, hands down. And I also really like Minerva, the third track on this album. I think that is an absolutely incredible song. It is super heavy. It is super dreamy. It's everything that I love about Deftones in one song. Just an all-around really solid record from Deftones.
I was going to say, too, I mean, you hit the nail on the head because I've always said that this is probably their most experimental album.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I didn't get into it for many years because I just couldn't figure out, like, what are they trying to do here, you know?
Yeah.
And there was even a trip-hop song on this album.
And that's one of my highlights, too.
Lucky You.
Yeah, love that song.
I saw online that people were like, yeah, that was Deftones experimenting with a literal trip-hop song.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
like, who would ever thought you would see something like that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Very fascinating listen. It might grow on me even more over time, but right now it's my number 6 pick. All right, guys, we're getting into each other's top 5s now, and there are some great albums here. I think that these top 5 albums pretty much like the best you can get in terms of Deftones, for sure. So, Mike, do the honors. Let's see your number 5 pick.
All right. So getting into the top 5, my number 5 is going to be Diamond Eyes.
Okay.
This is a very beloved Deftones album. Some people out there, this is their favorite.
Unless you're Anthony Fantano,
yeah.
which he hates this album, which, Anthony, if you're watching, you're wrong.
Yeah, dude,
Like-
honestly, like, this, I mean, dude, so this was the album that was the most recent when I first got into Deftones. Like, I got into them right after this album came out. Rocket Skates and the song Diamond Eyes were two of the first Deftones songs I ever heard, and immediately I loved this band. I mean, what I love about this album, the best way I've always described it, is like a beautifully heavy sound. This is
Absolutely.
like honestly, arguably their heaviest album. Like the guitar tone throughout this album is just
Oh, it's insane.
insane, literally. And the fact that they do that along with the very ethereal, atmospheric Deftones sound that they're more known for nowadays than they ever were, you know, just absolutely amazing that they combined all of that in this album. And when people say alternative metal, like, this is very much a quintessential example of that term. You know, I think that's very accurate to describe this. Because it's just too heavy to call this rock. I mean, it honestly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
definitely.
This is like, and it's one of those ones. It's so hard to put into words for me on why this album's so great. I'm sure Jake will do a better job at it when he talks about this album.
It is in my top 5 after all, so
yeah.
it's eventually coming.
But by any means, I do not blame anybody that has this as their favorite or top 3 or whatever. You know, I love it very much too. But there are 4 other albums for me that I do like a little bit more than this. So,
Exactly.
my favorite track on the album is Beauty School.
That's a good one.
That one's definitely grown in popularity over the years. So, but yeah, Diamond Eyes is my number 5.
Sweet.
So there you have it.
All right. Well, my number 5, this might be another hot take for some people, but I still think that this album is great. Like, these top 5 albums for me, these are all great albums. But my personal number 5, it's going to be Around the Fur.
Okay.
Like I said, really solid album. I mean, an album that has My Own Summer, Shove It, and Be Quiet and Drive is automatically great. Like, I feel like this album excels at the adrenaline formula, but, like, really, like, upping the ante and just having all-around better and tighter songwriting, better performances all across the board. Like, this is just a really consistent album in terms of its tone, and I feel like in terms of its quality.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are some really great songs on this record besides the 2 that I've mentioned. Like, the title track is really good. Ricketts is really good. Lotion. Like, when I listened to this album again, I even texted Mike and I told him Lotion is one of the most underrated Deftones songs.
It's a very
like,
good song.
it is really balls to the wall heavy.
Yeah.
It's super aggressive, and it's just really, like, in your face. It's just so good. Like, this is an album that you have to, like, crank the volume, headbang as much as you want. This is that type of album. I feel like the albums that I rank above this are just a little bit more nuanced, I guess you can say. Like, there's more to them. Like, this is just, like, a very, like, in your face, like, to the point. Like, this is, like, new metal, alternative metal, right then and there.
Yeah.
And the albums that are above this offer something more in terms of the Deftones sound. But this is still a fantastic album. It's really hard to pick a favorite song, but I really like My Own Summer. It is such a banger. And, you know, I've realized that I'm having this pattern right now where I'm picking a lot of opening tracks.
Yeah.
But let me just say, Deftones, they know how to open albums. Like, they are masters at it, I swear to God. Like, one listen and you're hooked.
Yeah,
like, you want to listen to the rest of the album because they just grip you so hard.
Yeah.
And they're just so good. But Around the Fur, great album. It is my number 5.
All right, so my number 4 is going to be Koi no Yokon from...
Much higher than my placement.
From 2012. I personally think this is better than Diamond Eyes. I honestly always thought that this and Diamond Eyes were similar to each other because they were only 2 years apart and they had a lot of similar elements, but I believe, in my opinion, this is the better album. It just, what Jake said earlier, like, he's absolutely right about this just being a front to back, for the most part, ethereal, just very, very atmospheric and shoegazy and dreamy album. And although I entirely understand what Jake's saying, how, like, maybe that's not what he or certain people expect from Deftones, but in my opinion, I think that they mastered that so much in this album that it is just a front to back. Like, if you are in the mood for this type of Deftones,
you're gonna have a good time.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like, Deftones are one of those bands that they have such a diverse discography. I feel like that, it kind of depends on what are you in the mood for, and if you're in the mood for this type of Deftones, I believe this is the best product they ever made as far as this style of what they are.
That's fair.
And
that's fair.
I just this was the first album that came out after I got into them in 2010, and I've loved it ever since it came out. I bought it on CD when it first came out because that was before I collected vinyl, but I've been hooked on this album ever since it came out, and honestly, I would say it's gotten even better for me over the years. Like, the older I got, the better and better this album got, and certain songs on it I got way more into than I ever was, and I just, this is definitely one of my Deftones favorites. So,
nice.
I do love the song Rosemary.
Hey,
but...
I don't hate Rosemary. I just want to get that out of the way. I don't hate Rosemary. It's just not one of my favorites.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Fair.
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, everyone's got different opinions about Deftones, and that's what makes them a great band. But
and that's why we're doing this video.
Exactly. As much as I love Rosemary, it's not quite my favorite. My favorite is actually a lesser-known song on this album that I've always loved since I was a kid, Poltergeist.
I love that song. That is definitely a highlight for me off this album.
I love that song, and I remember listening to it when I was really young, and I still listen to it so often nowadays.
It's really good.
It is.
That's a really good song.
That's my favorite on the album, but yeah.
Hell yeah.
So Koi no Yokon, number 4 for me. So
I'm glad that we agree that Poltergeist
yes.
is really, really fantastic. I feel like that's an underrated song
it is,
in the Deftones discography.
It was not a single, and they rarely have played it live after that era of when the album came out.
And it's a shame that's kind of forgotten about. All right, my number 4 pick is their newest album, Private Music.
Okay.
I love this album. Like, coming off of Gore to Ohms and then this, I feel like that is such a maturation of their sound and what they're trying to achieve in this newer era of Deftones. And I just think that front to back, this thing is fantastic. And, I'm sure that a lot of people are thinking maybe it's recency bias, because I've been listening to this album so much. Because I know that, some Deftones fans experienced that with Gore when it came out. A lot of people loved it, but then it kind of simmered down.
Yeah.
Ohms, same thing. A lot of people loved it when it came out. Now it's kind of simmered down. But I feel like Private Music, they finally captured what they're trying to go for in this current incarnation of Deftones. And it's just an all-around really solid album. I feel like the songs are very well written. It's a very cohesive project. It has a really good ebb and flow between the heavier cuts with the hazier cuts. And it's just a really fantastic front to back listen. I really love this album.
He's not alone, because there's a lot of people I've seen that are raving about it. So, and I enjoy it too. I think, like he said, modern Deftones, this is very, very good. So,
and it's on clear vinyl. How cool is that? My favorite track, probably the same as Mike's, Milk of the Madonna.
That's a good one.
I think that is a phenomenal song.
Yeah.
Literally like the textbook definition of Deftones being hazy and heavy at the same time. I feel like the shoegaze influence in that song is really, really prominent in that song. Like, Chino's vocals are, like, so low in the mix, but, like, he still has that aggression in his tone, and it's just like, this is what I want from Deftones. Other great songs on here, My Mind is a Mountain's great, Ectasis, really good, and Locked Club is surprisingly one of my favorite songs on the album. I know a lot of people don't really talk about that song a lot, but I absolutely love Locked Club. I feel like I've been playing it so much since this album came out. This is just a phenomenal album from Deftones, and it's my number 4 pick. 4 albums remain in each other's top 3s.
Yep.
So let's kick it off.
Right.
What is Mike's number 3 gonna be?
We're into the top 3 now. This is the top of the line. So my number 3, Saturday Night Wrist, 2006. So kind of like self-titled. When I was growing up, and I was a very young Deftones fan, I kind of blew this album off. Like, I didn't really like most of it. I really only liked like 2 or 3 songs, and for the most part, I thought it was just like whatever, you know, because once again, when I was younger, I was big into the aggressive nu metal stuff, so an album like this just didn't resonate with me. But the older I got, the more that I started to revisit this. Around like college time for me is when I started to really get into this album, and I started thinking to myself, why did I never like this album sooner? This, to me, easily one of the best products this band has ever made. And I know that's maybe a controversial opinion, because this is maybe the most controversial Deftones album in terms of what people's opinions are. There's some people out there that just do not like this album.
You're wrong.
Me, however, and a lot of Deftones fans, I think this thing is a near masterpiece, honestly. And, you know, I get it, like, self-titled and this album, that whole era, was definitely like a big conflict time in Deftones' history as a band. This was the last album that featured their bassist Cheech Chang.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Before he unfortunately got put into a coma and eventually passed away. But, you know, this album to me, I think, as far as like modern Deftones, like, this was a little bit before like the modern run started. I consider that to be like Diamond Eyes to present, but I think this definitely foreshadowed a lot of what they were gonna do. And it was a perfect introduction to this style of Deftones. You know, it is just, it's another one of those ones that I can't even really explain why exactly I love it so much. I just do. You know,
that's fair.
And I believe that this is an album that, regardless of what type of Deftones you're into, it's like a perfect middle ground, you know, and because of that, I easily think it's one of the best products they ever created. I love this album, and yeah, it's easily one of my favorites, my number 3. And one of the ones that I revisit the most. So my favorite song in the album is Beware.
That's a great one.
Dude.
That's a great one.
Awesome song. So, yeah, my number 3, Saturday Night Wrist.
Well, Mike, you can pass that record to me, because Saturday Night Wrist is also my number 3.
Okay.
I feel like in terms of Deftones, like, whereas Koi no Yokon is like their dreamiest album, I feel like this is like definitely their most shoegazy album.
Yeah.
Like, it's very heavy, very noisy, but there's just so much haze and reverb, and it's just like this cavernous, thick sound throughout this entire album. And I just think it's really, really well done. Like you said, it's kind of unfortunate that this album gets a bit overshadowed in some aspects. And like, I understand it was a very tumultuous time in the group's history. There was a lot of infighting.
Yeah.
And then obviously this was the last album to feature Chi Chang. Like, even though it was a very bleak time for them, they really came together and fired on all cylinders for Saturday Night Wrist. I think that all around, this is a great album. I do think that it kind of, like, starts a lot better than it finishes.
Okay.
But, like, the entire side one is incredible. The B-side has some really good songs as well. Like, Kim Dracula is really good. I also really like Combat from side 2. But side 1 is, like, really the meat and the potatoes of this album. It's got Hole in the Earth, which is my favorite song on the album, and probably my all-time favorite Deftones song. Like, if I had to pick one Deftones song to listen to for the rest of my life, it would probably be Hole in the Earth.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that song. Great guitar textures. Chino's vocals are powerful on that song. And I also love Beware, like we said, which they actually performed in Pittsburgh when we saw them, which was a big surprise. They don't really play a lot of material from Saturday Night Wrist in their live shows. And then you got to talk about Cherry Waves. That song is absolutely transcendental.
I was going to say,
it's so good.
That song has really grown in popularity because, like, when I was younger, no one ever talked about it. Now it's, like, literally one of their most played songs on streaming platforms. So,
and I think rightfully so.
Yeah,
it is
very
phenomenal.
Yep.
And then mine, that's the song that features Surge from System of a Down.
Yep.
Another great highlight from this album. And another highlight is the front cover image. Very iconic cover art. If you know, you know.
Quite the interesting pick to have be on a mainstream album cover that was sold in stores.
Absolutely. All around, great cover art, great music, great album. We love Saturday Night Wrist.
All right, my number 2 is going to be White Pony from 2000.
Interesting.
So, this album, to me, and to a lot of people, I think is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And here's the thing, I feel like for me, even though it's my number 2, if I was looking at it strictly from a critic standpoint and, like, really judging the music itself, I think 100% this is the best product this band has ever created. It is front to back just unbelievable. I mean, and the thing that I love the most about this album, even more than the music itself, is the fact that, this came out in 2000, which was literally like the peak of nu metal, and the band completely strayed away from the nu metal that they were doing, and they said, we're going to do our own thing, and they made White Pony. And yeah, they had Back to School, that song that came out on a later version of White Pony that was released in 2001. The original version did not have that song on it. What I read into was that song was supposed to be like a record label kind of like, industry plant kind of song, since that was what was popular at the time. But the band themselves, the rest of the album and the original version of White Pony that did not feature that song was completely like it was its own thing in the year 2000,
and that's really interesting to me because I don't think it's that bad of a song.
It's not, but it definitely does fit those nu metal elements.
Oh, for sure. There's no denying that.
But yeah, man, I mean, this album gets raved about so much, rightfully so. This really is like quintessential Deftones. A lot of these songs are just absolute classics. Two big features on this album: Maynard James Keenan from Tool and Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots.
And those are two bands that this dude really loves.
Oh yeah, and it's mind blowing. I mean, it's one of those things. When I start trying to talk about this album, there's just so much that comes to mind. I can't spew it all out in such a small increment, but just know that yes, I am one of those people that agrees this is an absolute masterpiece. One of the best products, if not the best product this band has ever made, if you're looking at it from a critic standpoint. My favorite song has honestly always been Knife Party.
That's a good one. That is a banger.
The opera vocals later on in that song, oh my god, dude. It hits. To this day, it sends chills down my spine every time I hear it. And, yeah.
It's awesome.
White Pony, man. It is... Yeah. This is... It does not get much better than this, so, in terms of Deftones, so, yeah.
Now, speaking of White Pony, that is my copy that he's holding, but he also owns the Black Stallion
box set. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's like for diehard Deftones fans.
I was that big of a fan of this album that when that came out, I had to get it. There's a lot of like unreleased stuff or previously unreleased stuff on there, you know, all kinds of good stuff. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for my number 2, and my number 2 is going to be Diamond Eyes. Now, I was really struggling between Saturday Night Wrist and Diamond Eyes for my 2 and my 3. But I feel like that this one just got a slight edge over Saturday Night Wrist, because I feel like Saturday Night Wrist, don't get me wrong, great album, super atmospheric. I feel like that this one just has a little bit more of an edge to it. Like, this is like a very powerfully heavy album for Deftones standards, but it still has like that dreamy quality that we all know and come to love about Deftones. Like you were talking about in your pick for this album when you had it in the number 5 spot. Like, it's just, you hit the nail on the head. Like, this is just a beautifully heavy album.
It is, yeah.
But I really do feel like this one just punches you in the face a little bit more than Saturday Night Wrist, and I feel like that makes it just a little bit more memorable for me. Like, kind of like I was saying about Saturday Night Wrist, side 1 of this album is phenomenal. I mean, you got the opening title track, which, like I've said before, this band knows how to open albums.
Yeah.
That is just a really, like, high-octane thrill ride of an opener, and then you got Royal, Command Control. Like, these are some hard-hitting, just bangers.
Absolutely.
They are absolute bangers. And then you get, like, you know, they're more, like, dreamy sound on stuff like Beauty School and Sex Tape, which is definitely one of the most atmospheric cuts that the band has ever put out. But it's a really gorgeous song. Like, for a ballad from Deftones, it's as good as it's going to get with Sex Tape. But this is just an all-around fantastic album. It kind of suffers from what I was saying about Saturday Night Wrist. I do think that this album starts off stronger than it ends, but it's still like a really great collection of songs as a whole, and this is just a phenomenal offering from Deftones. It's really hard to pick a favorite song, but if I had to pick one, this is really tough. I'd probably say Rocket Skates. I really think that is a really great moment on this track list, but I mean, there's just so many fantastic cuts on this album that it's really hard to choose. But yeah, I absolutely love Diamond Eyes, and for me, it is my number 2 spot.
All right, so here comes each one of our number 1 picks, our favorite Deftones album for each one of us.
As if you don't know what they already are, but it is what it is.
My personal number 1, it has always been my number 1, and still is to this day, Around the Fur, 1997. Let's start off here. So, big thing for me with this, obviously, as you could have guessed, nostalgia. You know, I have so many memories of just blasting this album and so many different songs off of it when I was a kid. It absolutely smacks to this day. It
really does smack.
It never gets old. It's one of those albums, I've heard it so many times, front to back. Like, there's not really many albums in existence that I have heard as many times as this album. It never gets old. I can always put this on and just have a blast listening to it. It is just, like, it's one of those albums, dude. Like, everybody has those albums that have just always been with them their whole life, just really resonate with them, and it's like they know them at the back of their hand. this is one of those albums for me. And because of that, it is my favorite Deftones album. And the big thing for me, and everyone, you know, is going to have a different opinion on this, but for me personally, this is Deftones to me. You know, this album is what I think of when I think of Deftones. Like when I think Deftones, I think of My Own Summer, Be Quiet and Drive, the title track, Head Up with Max Cavalera from Sepultura and Soulfly. Like, this album is what I think of when I think Deftones. I think of the album cover, like the big hits off of it. Like, this to me, in my opinion, is quintessential Deftones. You know, it's and like, okay, was it the best like musical product they can make? Maybe not, but as far as my own enjoyment, hands down, this is my number one.
And that's totally fair.
Yeah, and everything about this is iconic. The album cover, iconic. The music videos off of this album, iconic. And it's crazy that we're now hearing some of these songs on the radio. You know, like, yeah, they may have been played in the 90s, but like when I was growing up, they didn't really play a lot of Deftones on the radio, but like I'll hear My Own Summer on the radio now, and it's like crazy.
Shove
like,
it, shove it, shove it.
It just blows my mind. But yeah, man, been listening to this album since I was 10 years old. This is easily one of the albums that got me into metal music and heavier music in general, easily. And just so many reasons, you know, that this is my number one, and it probably always will be. This is like, if I had a Mount Rushmore of albums in my life, this is one of them easily. So
awesome.
My favorite song, maybe a little cliche, but it is My Own Summer. I mean, dude.
I mean, you can't go wrong with that song.
Literally.
It's so good.
It is. My God, dude! I might even be my favorite Deftones song ever. Who knows?
I totally respect that pick.
And that riff, man. That to me is like, I feel like it gets slept on. Like if someone's making like a list of like '90s guitar riffs, that to me should be a top 10 easily in like anybody's list. But unfortunately, I guess it's just not mainstream enough to make the rankings. You know, compared to a lot of other '90s bands, but.
Who knows? It deserves to be up there, though.
Absolutely. Around the Fur, my all-time favorite Deftones album. So, there you have it. I could go on for hours, but, you know, we're on limited time, so
yeah.
That's my number one.
But yeah, I mean, Around the Fur really had a profound impact on your life, because you said that it got you into metal music. And this guy,
one of those albums,
this guy right here is a metal and hardcore encyclopedia.
But believe it or not, yes.
Like, you give him an artist, and he will know who they are, like, 95% of the time.
There were a few other bands, but Deftones is definitely one of those bands. I cannot tell my story of getting into even just alternative music in general without talking about Deftones. And when I think about me getting into them and my childhood of listening to them, that's the album I think of, is Around the Fur.
Sweet.
And because of that, it is easily my number one pick.
And that's a totally respectable opinion, and I think that people are also going to respect my opinion, as my number one is none other than White Pony. Wow, what a phenomenal album. I feel like I'm saying phenomenal way too much in this video, but it's true. Deftones really have a lot of phenomenal albums under their belt. And I really feel like, you know, how you were saying Around the Fur is the album that makes you think of Deftones. This is the album that makes me think of Deftones. And it's kind of fitting, because this was the first Deftones album I've ever heard. I know that you brought this to a vinyl listening session, which we do occasionally. One of our other buddies, we get together and we listen to records. And one night, Mike over here brought White Pony, and that was my first exposure to a full Deftones album, and I really liked it then, and it has grown on me even more now. And I don't think it's because of nostalgia or anything. I just think that this is an all-around fantastic album. It's super expansive. Like, I really do feel like the Deftones was really trying to do something new and expand beyond their new metal roots. And they not only did they do that successfully, but the songs themselves are so high quality
They are,
that
yeah.
it's just really like a marvel in like the alternative metal canon.
Yeah.
Like you can hear everything from, you know, of course, like their new metal brethren. Like you can hear Limp Bizkit and like stuff from that era.
Yeah.
Korn, of course. But you also get stuff that like can remind you of like The Cure and Joy
Absolutely.
Division,
Yeah.
stuff that reminds you of Cocteau Twins, My Bloody Valentine. Like they were pulling so many different influences onto this album, and they really wanted to try and stand out and make something that was totally unique, not just to them, but also the entire metal universe.
Absolutely.
And they absolutely succeeded with White Pony. Like, man, this is just such an expansive and mind-altering batch of songs right here. And, like, literally every track has something unique. Like, they have so many different elements. Like, not one song sounds similar to another song.
Yeah.
Like, it really has that type of variety, but it's still, like, quintessentially Deftones.
Yeah, and it all
You know?
blends together.
Exactly. Like, this is really, like, one cohesive
It
experience.
is, yeah.
And it's just a phenomenal record. Like, man, I can't say enough good things about White Pony. Like, I totally understand why this album became such a benchmark
It did,
in music history, because it's just such a unique listen.
It is, yeah.
And it's just really amazing how Deftones were able to evolve from Adrenaline to this in just over the span of 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely remarkable the amount of passion and creativity and thought that went into this record. It's just absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
And some phenomenal songs yet to boot, like Knife Party, which is his favorite cut. It's also one of my favorite songs from this album. I really can't pick just one song off this
I
album
don't blame
because they're all pretty great and they have something unique to say. I love Digital Bath. I think that song is phenomenal,
Yeah.
super atmospheric and very haunting. Elite is also really good. I really love that song. Korea's great. Passenger with Maynard James Keenan is another undeniable highlight for me.
Absolutely.
And then we got to talk about Change in the House of Flies.
Yeah.
Like, come on, buddy. Like, that is, mwah, like, the chef's kiss.
Yeah.
It is so good. Like, wow, what an album. Deftones, White Pony, that is coming in for my number one pick.
Can't go wrong with that.
Absolutely. I forgot to mention something. I actually lied this entire time. I think that Pink Cell Phone is the all-time greatest Deftones song. And, you know, it's the reason why British people have bad teeth. Amen.
Yeah.
Am I right?
That I would say that song is part of the reason I don't give Saturday Night Risk the 10 out of 10 treatment. So,
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching this ranking video. Let us know in the comments below what your favorite Deftones albums are from worst to best. We would love to know.
Yeah,
And as always, if you came this far, thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me and Mike over here. And we will see you in the next video. Take it easy, everybody.